Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Wednesday Comics. This is a day when I would ordinarily feature comics that I had gone to the comic shop and bought, either new collections or new single issues, but the pandemic sort of put a monkey wrench in that. And here in Boston, that monkey wrench is largely removed. Comic shops are back open for business. They have common sense observations, rules that you have to observe, but you can still go. And I just haven't done that. I still peruse the listings for stuff that's scheduled to come out, but the listing that hasn't so far prompted me to go to the comic shop. I usually fold the comic shop into other errands, and there aren't any that are anywhere near the comic shops that I use. That wouldn't be true if, for instance, we were 6 or 7 years ago when Open Letters Monthly, the online literary journal where I was the managing editor, had a post office box in Kenmore Square, just a 1 minute from Fenway Park. And I used to go there. I used to troop out to that post office box with muscular teenagers and just clean it out three or four times a week. And there is a great comic shop right near there, so that was easy. But there's nothing like that now. There's no route that makes it easy now, so I haven't got back into the habit of going to my local comic shop. There was scheduled for comic book shops release today, something I very much wanted. I mentioned it on this channel. Hardcover new release of Nightwing Year One, drawn by the great Scott McDaniel. That if I were going to my comic shop, I would gladly grab that. Gladly, I would. I'd very much want it. I don't have it in the format. This is a nice elaborate format, and it's a fantastic story. So, but that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough to get me to the comic shop. Maybe next week that will be different. Maybe if there's something big. So instead, we've been going through back issues of mine. I've been going through my long boxes, and we have finished, as of today, we have finished another long box, which is great for me because I'm storing these things as I go and cleaning up. So let's see what we have. Okay, so first we have a batch of True Believers. These are issues that Marvel Comics was doing where they would bring out a $1 reprint of something from their vast back catalog, usually themed to support some new work that they were doing, to shore it up and maybe fill in readers so that there'd be more people who will spend the $50 on hardcover or something like that. In this case, it's all Conan. Conan the Barbarian. Marvel Comics got the rights to Conan the Barbarian and all of Robert E. Howard's properties back in, I think, 2018, and started softening the ground with True Believer issues. Here we have The Curse of the Golden Skull, which is one of the issues of Conan that's drawn by Neil Adams. Here we have Conan the Barbarian #1, a reprint of Conan the Barbarian #1, drawn by Barry Windsor Smith when he was very much in his Jack Kirby phase, and not in the more sinuous and sensuous stuff that he did later on. And then the first issue of King Conan. Marvel Comics did a series about an adult Conan, a Conan who is king of Aquilonia and his adventures there, and this was the first one. Cover is grossly misleading. This confrontation does happen between Conan and Thoth Amon. It does happen, but not in this first issue. But the first issue is really good anyway, and introduces us to Conan's teenage son Khan. And those were I gobbled up a lot of True Believer issues when I was going regularly to my comic shop on Newbury Comics. When I was going regularly, I would grab them because it doesn't impinge any to put $1 or $2 onto your tab, and it's great to revisit these things, especially since I have the original issues of all three of these. But they're in terrible shape. They fall apart a little more every time I read them. Having a new reprint for $1 is fine by me. Okay, then we have this was a money-making thing for Marvel Comics. Years and years ago, the writer Kurt Busiek and the artist Alex Ross did a 4-issue miniseries for Marvel called Marvels, which was about the rise of superheroes in the Marvel Comics universe, starting in the World War II era and coming up to the present day. And it was great. Marvels is great. It's absolutely fantastic. And I have a feeling that there is some sort of legal machinery behind Marvels that forces Marvel Comics to reprint it regularly or lose it. I don't know if that's true. I can't imagine that Kurt Busiek would strike a deal like that, but Alex Ross maybe? I don't know, one way or another. They come out with new elaborations on Marvels all the time. Every year there's a reprint of the resulting graphic novel. And this was a wrinkle on that, because this was Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross adding material. At least now that I'm looking at this, I want to check and make sure that Busiek did write this. Yes, he did. This is an epilogue to Marvel's that takes the story a little bit further into the future. Our main character is a little bit older. Superheroes are still abounding. And this deals with an incident in Rockefeller Center starring the X-Men, the all-new, all-different X-Men. And it was a treat on one level to see Alex Ross and Kurt Busiek just going at all this material again. It's just, get you another page here, just an absolute delight to see that. It was irritating for me in one way. As I mentioned, when I bought this and was fresh from reading it, it was irritating for me in one way because this is Boglerized. The issue that begins with this panel, the issue with Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum from the all-new, all-different X-Men is not 80 years ago. This was in the 1980s. The creators of that issue, the artist and the writer, are both alive and both still working. And yet, despite that fact, this is Boglerized. Kurt Busiek went back to that issue, and although in a writer interview here, he says that he changed nothing, he does in fact change the dialogue, because one of the X-Men in this issue is Banshee, who is an Irish superhero with sonic abilities, and in Chris Claremont's original issue, Claremont loads him with stereotypical Hollywood Irish speak. Faith and begorra, oh, ye don't know, oh, ye never will figure it out, that sort of thing. And Busiek removes that in this issue. And it's easy to tell why. It's easy to tell why he does it, and it's not a good reason. It's a very bad reason. It's saying that basically Claremont was being a bigot. He's being a thoughtless bigot, and that we can be better. We can be better in the 21st century. I loved seeing these two paired together, and I loved seeing Alex Ross's take on a great X-Men moment. But the idea that we have to politically shame an issue from so recently that the creators are still alive and kicking really sat poorly with me. And I think one of the reasons that Marvel did this issue is so that now every issue of every reprint of Marvel's, the graphic novel, will have this. And that'll be an extra selling point, because not everybody is anywhere near a comic shop. So a lot of people never saw this. So the next time someone wants to buy a graphic novel, a Marvel's graphic novel, probably at Christmas time there'll be another reissue. It'll have this in it, and it was great. It was great to see this from ground level, so to speak. Here we have the Sentinels attack, these giant mutant hunting robots attack the X-Men in Rockefeller Center, and several of the X-Men are brand new and have never encountered a Sentinel before, and one of those new X-Men is Storm, who has weather powers, and we get to see this from the ground up, which is very much in the keeping of the spirit of Marvel's, where we see everything from the perspective of a normal human in the Marvel universe. So we see this gigantic robot being engulfed in hurricane-strength winds. And there is Storm as a tiny figure. And you have to go back to the original Claremont and Cockrum issue to read the dialogue of what's happening up on that roof, where Storm is saying that I will not be moved. You're not a threat to me. I can destroy you. And it works. It's a wonderful moment. It's one of the earliest moments where we get a sense of how well Storm is going to work as a character. So my irritation has largely abated with the issue. Oh no. Oh, it looks like a lot of these are going to be relatively recent stuff from just a couple of years ago. Like, for instance, after a long hiatus, DC Comics relaunched the Legion of Superheroes, my favorite of their currently legally unentangled properties, which involves a superhero team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future. And before they started out with Legion #1, they gave us Legion of Superheroes Millennium, issue 1 and issue 2, where we follow one character who lives through that 1,000 years. She turns out to be immortal, so that she can greet the Legion. When she finally gets to their time period, she can meet them, and her plotline, the plotline of that 20th century character, has not been fleshed out in the Legion character, in the actual Legion comic book so far. Maybe it will, or maybe the writer, Brian Michael Bendis, has simply forgotten about it. He's not all that careful a writer. He might just have forgotten that he devoted a whole 2 issues to that character and to a very important thing that she had to tell the Legion when she finally lived long enough to reach them. It can't have been that important. But then we have more new issues. Like, for instance, DC Comics came out with a 12-issue series starring Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal, done for humor. And I got this first issue. I don't think I got any of the others. I really liked this first issue. And I'm not 100% sure why I didn't get any of the others. Maybe they weren't there in the comic shop on the days that I went or whatever. And the same thing is true with this next one, Lois Lane. This is number... What have we got here? Number 2, number 3, and number 4. But I have 1 through 5, I think. They gave Lois Lane a 12-issue series as well. These great covers. Look at these great covers. And like Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane has had 50 years more of DC Comics continuity. She's held her own comic many times. So it was great to see, and also this was done really, really well. The story is done really, really well. There are many plot lines that are working. Some of them are relatively trivial. Some of them are more important. And this is a perfect example of an ongoing floppy comic, a monthly comic, something that I was eager to get to and buy. Not just a collection or a graphic novel or a hardcover, but an actual weekly comic that I was eager to get to. This is a perfect example of something being shut down by the pandemic. Because I stopped buying this because the comic shops closed. And now I don't know that I would go back because I'd have a lot of issues to catch up on. If I could find a comic store that was open that had all of those back issues, I would probably do that, but I haven't gone yet. And the same thing is true here. This is another floppy that I went into the stores to get. We saw this last time. This is Up in the Sky, a Superman 6 or 7 issue series of Superman that was done originally for Walmart Comics. They were distributed only to Walmart, so I never saw them. A lot of Superman fans didn't see them. It was one of DC Comics' many attempts to diversify their the dissemination of their comics. A very wise idea, it turned out, an prescient idea. But this is drawn by Andy Kubert, and it's terrific. Most of these issues had 2 stories in them, very tentatively connected to a general plot line about a missing girl. And this is issue number 3. And one of the stories in here is Superman in World War II. Somehow he ends up in World War II, fighting alongside some of DC's standard World War II heroes, and it's a wonderful, wonderful moment. I have some of these as well, but I stopped getting Up in the Sky because of the pandemic. I'm pretty sure that's what stopped me. Then The History of the Marvel Universe, written by Mark Waid, just a big encyclopedia thing about the very earliest days of the Marvel Universe, which are the oldest characters, which are the oldest organizations. Marvel Tales #1. This is a Spider-Man reprint issue. Reprints 3 issues. The Marvel Spotlight issue with Jim Mooney artwork that introduced Spider-Woman. A Spider-Man issue that gives us all sorts of details about the Black Cat. And a great John Romita Sr. issue, Stan Lee and John Romita Sr. issue of Mysterio, the villain in Spider-Man Far From Home movie or whatever it was called. The one with Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. That was the whole reason for that issue coming out. Okay, then we have... Marvel did this as well. In addition to True Believer issues, where they just reprint something for $1, they also came out with these... I forget what they were called. They have a name. Issues where they just wholesale reprint an earlier issue with a $5 price tag. Instead of, I think, the original Giant Size X-Men #1 was, I think, $1.50 or something like that. I have it. It's in one of these long boxes. But I don't have it in anything like... This is laminated cover, really high-quality pages. That's what happened when these things shift to the direct market. The quality of the physical product usually went up. This will stand for a long time of rereading. And this is the aforementioned Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum reintroducing the X-Men for a modern era after a long period of cancellation. So you have the original team in the background there, and then you have the new team. And this is the whole of that issue. And it's not just the issue, it's also the ads. Everything. This is just literally reprinted page for page. And that was delightful. Just absolutely delightful. I wanted more of these, but whatever these were called, I forget what these were called. But these reprint issues sold out. They really did. I would go to the comic shop and I would have looked at a list ahead of time the night before, and I would think, well, I want all the True Believer issues for today. They're $1 a piece, so why not? But I also want these facsimile reprints, the one or two that are coming out today. And very often, the kid at the comic shop told me they're not here. It's just sold out right away. So I don't have a lot of them. And then this next one is another Marvel Tales. This one stars Captain America, and it's four issues of Captain America, including a John Byrne issue that retells his whole story. John Byrne artwork that was really enjoyable. Okay, and then we finish off with a block. We're going to finish off with a block of issues, and this is the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, which Marvel did to sort of quantify their heroes and villains in a way that DC Comics has never done. DC Comics came close to this, but not with actual figures and not with science. So here you get it's just an encyclopedia. So you have the actual powers and personality and background breakdowns on Spider-Man, the Silver Surfer, Submariner, that's Storm, and a whole bunch of other characters. And I grabbed these two issues. Here's issue number 9 and number 10. There's Quicksilver and his sister, the Scarlet Witch, Shanna the She-Devil, the Sasquatch. I grabbed these two issues because I heard a rumor that Marvel Comics was going to come out with a nice hardcover omnibus of the Marvel Handbook, of the official Marvel Handbook, Handbook of the Marvel Universe. And I thought, there's no way they'll do that. There's no way they'll do that with these, because this whole series was superseded by a deluxe reprint that had much longer entries, much better entries for everybody, much more detail, many more people. And I thought, surely, if Marvel's going to go to the bother of reprinting something like this for an omnibus edition, they'll use that, the deluxe edition. But they didn't. They did reprint these. Like, for instance, here is the page on Submariner. You get an original illustration, and you get the character's history, and then the part that all the fans cared about, a breakdown of the character's powers. And in this original one, there's much less detail. The Submariner has 3 or 4 pages in the deluxe edition, but in this he only has 1 page and very few details of how his powers break down. And that's true for everybody here, including some cases where the breakdown is not good enough. Let me see. There's a character here, Starfox. He is actually the brother of Thanos, and he's a member of the Eternals of Titan. So he has a suite of fairly boring superpowers, and we're told about those. Like all Eternals, Starfox can levitate himself by mentally manipulating gravitons, subatomic particles that carry the force of gravitational attraction between particles. He can fly about 800 miles per hour at a rate of speed exceptional for his kind. His strength, also above average for the male Eternal, enables him to lift approximately 15 tons. And that's it. That's all we get for Starfox's power, when actually this character has a very emphasized power in the brief stint that he had on the Avengers a long time ago, decades and decades ago. He is not a revivable character, not in his old format at all, because we are told that his primary power was to activate the pleasure centers of the female brain. In some issues, it's made clear that he can activate the pleasure centers of everybody's brain, but he prefers to activate the pleasure centers of female brains. And that's said over and over again in issues where he was on the Avengers. That's listed very prominently as one of his superpowers. He can fly, he's kind of strong, but the main thing that he is a walking, talking date rape drug. So Marvel is going to have to revamp him if they ever revive him, and they don't mention it. They don't mention that aspect in here. Although I'm pretty sure that aspect is mentioned in the deluxe official handbook of the Marvel Universe. I only have a couple of these issues, and I never did get that hardcover omnibus. Because why would I? Why would I bother when I know what I want? And then I've got a few other things here. Like, for instance, okay, this is downright strange, but Marvel did this as well, because the handbooks to the Marvel Universe sold fairly well. Fans wanted to know all these little geeky details. And so Marvel also did handbooks for characters who were dead. Then I don't know quite how to deal with that. You've got characters rising up out of a graveyard. All of the characters here are dead, and there was a later update. There is the aforementioned Banshee, for instance. These characters are all dead. This is a John Byrne cover. but there are more. There are more dead encyclopedia entries. And one of the funny things about these issues, of course, is how few of these people stayed dead. Most of them did not. I mean, you've got this cover here. Yes, Captain Marvel stayed dead. But Baron von Strucker, Bucky, famously did not stay dead. And a lot of these others, I think this is Sharon Carter. The Beyonder, Graviton, the Ancient One? No. Most of these characters have, writers have just revived them in one way or another. Same thing is true here. So that makes it kind of fun to read these things, because if I remember correctly, every entry for every one of these characters includes the panel in which they die. So you just get to see how little of this means anything. But Marvel also did an update. This is an update for 1989 that gives us entries on a whole bunch of characters who didn't have entries in the earlier thing, and gives us entries on newer Marvel characters, including, for instance, Venom. And that's all fascinating too. It makes it all the more required at some point or other for Marvel to treat this right, because this was a huge amount of editorial work on the part of the so-called Marvel bullpen. This was a huge amount of work to pour through all the issues, all the back issues, and figure out what these characters can do. Because the whole conceit of the Marvel Handbook was that we're going to say that these characters can do only things they have been seen to do. So if an artist picks a character, the Black Avenger or whatever, or the Yellow Menace or whoever it is, and we see them lifting a truck, but we never see them lifting an aircraft carrier, then we know how strong they are. That's as much as they can do. No matter what they claim, and no matter what anybody else claims. So you had an editorial crew that went through all of these back issues and found all of that stuff and laid it all out in extreme detail. And sooner or later, Marvel is going to have to honor that work. I would hope that Marvel would honor that work with a huge hardcover anthology of the deluxe Handbook to the Marvel Universe with all of the updates. So in other words, you would have the deluxe Handbook to the Marvel Universe entries for Spider-Man and the Submariner and the Silver Surfer. You would have the deceased Handbook entries for characters who are now alive again. You just rewrite them so that the characters aren't dead anymore, and you would have all the updates as well. You just work them all in. I would love it if Marvel would do that. I would certainly buy it, because I have over on the shelves over there, I have black and white trade paperback collections of the official Handbook of the Marvel Universe, the deluxe edition, and I consult it all the time. It is the Bible. So I would love it if Marvel would do that. But anyway, that is that was a fairly contemporary stack of comics this time around. Reminds me that I was actively buying floppy comics, and how could I not be? I mean, if you want to make sure that Steve is going to comic stores and buying your monthly comics, then you will make a new storyline about Lois Lane, or Jimmy Olsen, or Superman, or the Legion of Superheroes. The only thing that was missing, for legal reasons, was Superboy. Not a clone Superboy, but Clark Kent when he was a teenager. That was the only thing that was missing. When I bought it, I would have bought it. It would have been a clean sweep. But maybe I will resume that. Maybe I will. I don't relish the idea of coming in cold in the middle of Jimmy Olsen or Lois Lane or anything like that. But maybe there'll be new issues. I am still reading the Legion of Superheroes, the Brian Michael Bendis Legion, thanks to Mark Richardson and his wife up in Vermont sending me issues. I'm not behind on that. So maybe when the new issue of the Legion comes out, that will tempt me to go to my comic shop, and then I will see what the lay of the land is. But one way or another, we will revisit comics again on Friday. But until then, I will sign off. Thank you, BookTube.